Good morning, all. I hope you all had a good weekend. I'd like to begin, as we have been, with the recognition that we are on Kalapuya land that was ceded in treaties only partially ceded in the treaties in the middle of the 1800s. That the Kalapuya people are still with us on these lands, part of the Confederated Tribes of the Celeste Indians and the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde. And I have no other announcements, so we will move on with introductions. I'm Zan Oswell, Commissioner.
Nancy Wyatt, Commissioner.
Pat Malone, Commissioner.
Vance Cronin, County Council.
Matt Weatherall, Juvenile Department Director, Acting County Administrator.
John, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Coordinator.
Erica Marlowe, Board Recorder.
Good morning, Kate Portia, Corvallis, Benton County Economic Development Office.
Good morning, April Holland with Health Department.
It's not one of our cars, is it?
No, not mine. John, could you close the door for me?
Thank you all. Vance, did you introduce yourself?
Can you not hear me?
Oh, he did? Okay. I just missed it.
Yep,
Sorry.
Yep, I did. And you can't hear
My
me,
bad.
correct?
Yes.
All right, and I also want to say a special good morning to Nancy. Nancy walked by in the office, waved, and it was so odd to see her in person that I just sort of kind of went, ah! Good morning, Nancy.
Funny.
Good morning. It feels good to be here in person.
It's probably nice and cool in there. It's definitely not in my house.
I already cranked the AC up, and it's not even, it's 9 a.m.
Uh-huh. Okay. Do we have any comments from the public? Okay, moving on. I do not have any amendments to the agenda from my end. Are there any other additions to the agenda? Okay, then the agenda stands as it is. And we will move on from there. Today's work session begins with the update from the Emergency Operations and Department Operations Centers. And I don't know whether Brian is here from the EOC side or whether, okay, April, go ahead from the EOC side.
Good morning. Yeah, so I'm happy to give an update on, COVID overall, as well as how we're doing in the EOC to DOC transition. I've officially taken on the EOC director role with Brian in understudy position. Actually, I'm studying under him, but have the title. Everything's going really well in terms of that, and I'll get into a little more detail in a minute. Overall, we've been enjoying the lower risk category for a couple of weeks now, which is wonderful. As you all know, our equity plan was approved 5/14, and we moved to lower risk on May 21st. And in terms of COVID case rates, it appears that we're starting to see the benefit of having a high vaccination rate, just what we've been waiting for. Our case rates over the last several 14-day periods have gone from 204 to 189 to 114, and the last one I calculated was 67 per 100,000. So we should learn, it should be somewhere right around that, released later today. So really great to see those numbers falling, and we're hoping that stays. And for reference, if we weren't already in lower risk category for vaccination rate, we would be approaching it as 50 per 100,000 is that threshold, and we're getting close at that, around 67. As of today, 62% of all county residents, that's all ages, have had at least one dose of vaccine, and 54% have completed their vaccine series. That's wonderful. We're also really proud that our youngest eligible residents are being vaccinated. As of last Friday, 47% of 12 to 15-year-olds in Benton County had received a dose of Pfizer. It's the highest rate in any county by far. So we're so proud of our youth and parents and our community for that. As an epidemiologist, I can't help but put a little gray disclaimer in the background. It's important to remember that hospitalizations and deaths are lagging indicators from COVID cases, which we did see high COVID cases in the last few months. We have learned of 2 additional COVID-19 deaths in the last couple of weeks, just to remind us all that there's a cost to these flare-ups and cases, and we must continue to take them very seriously. In total, we've had 22 COVID-19 deaths in Benton County residents and over 3,000 known COVID cases. To our clinic and vaccination efforts, they are ongoing, although our mass clinics at Research Stadium are down to its last 2 weeks. Our mass clinics, in partnership with Samaritan and Oregon State University, have administered well over 70,000 doses. We'll celebrate our last day at Research next Thursday, June 10th. And you may already know this, but any first doses given at Research will have the corresponding second doses given at SamCare Express in Corvallis. And then moving ahead on the 14th of June, SamCare Express will offer drop-in service for vaccination at the Corvallis and Albany locations 7 days a week from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. And then here at the Emergency Operations Center, we are into our transition, into our move to a Department Operations Center, and then within about 90 days from there, we will be moving to normalize our COVID response and recovery into public health. We're working on finalizing our staffing needs and ensuring a smooth transition. We do have some additional clinics that we're prepping for that I'd like to share with you. We have our second dose clinics for our Blodgett and Kings Valley first dose clinics that we held recently. Those are going to be combined to a single second dose clinic at the Wren Community Center. And then we're also planning on, that's next Tuesday, and then the following Tuesday will be the College Hill second dose clinic. And our focus here in the EOC to DOC to public health is to reduce vaccination gaps, both among racial and ethnic subgroups as well as geographic disparities. And we do have a lot to do there. I want to share that, in terms of racial disparity, Pacific Islander and Black African American residents have low rates of vaccination in Benton County, with just 26 and 28% vaccinated, respectively, compared to 50% of people of white residents. And geographically, Alsea and Blodgett are areas of concern, with 32% for Alsea and 19% for Blodgett residents. Finally, we aim to see the vast majority of COVID vaccine operations move to the usual spaces we expect to find vaccines, at doctors' offices and pharmacies. We're partnering with small clinics with the Samaritan Mobile Unit. Local pharmacies are providing on-site vaccination as well. Our community health centers are holding mass vaccine events, smaller ones, and we conduct some using our own staff. So the work continues. Most people who don't have issues with access will be able to go to providers and pharmacies, and we are really just going to be data-driven in our areas, in our efforts to really minimize those gaps. I think that's all I have for you today, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Oh, I'm sorry, I left off one thing. We are in the process of confirming a Sunday clinic at Linus Middle School on June 27th. So a Sunday afternoon, probably around 12 to 6, 200 to 300 vaccinations, and this will be outreach will be conducted to make this a BIPOC-focused event. And we really want to get many of our community partners engaged in being vaccinators and in volunteering and helping to spread the word to get people to that clinic. We want to hold vaccination education sessions, and that body of work is starting this week. Thanks.
Thank you. Are there questions for April?
Yeah, I have a couple. You mentioned some low vaccination rates in some of the rural areas. Living in Kings Valley, the unincorporated areas don't have real boundaries, and so I was curious how you figure out a percentage of people when it's a little fuzzy where they reside.
Sure. So we get a weekly data output from the state system for vaccination, and we geocode the actual addresses. We don't just look at zip codes, which might expand beyond boundaries, and are able to the best of our ability, map those locations given to best estimate those living in Benton County and in those areas.
Great, that sounds like real useful information. The other thing, a couple of days ago, Washington Post had an article kind of talking about the trend to lower infection rates, and they played around, and so things look pretty good, but what they did was separate out vaccinated and unvaccinated populations, and the rates were, it depended on the area, but maybe twice as high for the unvaccinated group. And just wondering if we track anything like that. I mean, it seemed like a real useful tool instead of putting everybody and averaging that and say, well, the vaccinated group should have a much lower rate, and the unvaccinated look like still pretty serious.
Sure. That's I have that article on my desktop as marked as to read, but I think that we will start to, as time goes on, change the way that we look at cases. I mean, and on one hand, a case of COVID is a case, and the case investigation and contact tracing should continue regardless, but we may eventually get to the point to where we're able to just look at unvaccinated and prioritize those because transmission is much more likely in unvaccinated populations. We can do that now. I think that as we move forward, it's going to become more common to prioritize those cases. We also prioritize by location right now. So if we see a case in a long-term care facility, whether it's a vaccinated person or not, we're going to put that one right at the top of the list. So there are several factors that we'll continue to consider when looking at our case rates and prioritizing those investigations.
It seemed like that might be in the future part of our messaging is to try to encourage the unvaccinated group to sign up.
Absolutely, yes, and we will see, I have no doubt, more severe outcomes in those who are unvaccinated. Other things that might bring people over to vaccination, aside from the dire consequences that they could face, are things like like what we've heard from the governor recently about the ability for sporting events to have vaccinated sessions that don't require masking. So there are a lot of ways that we can try to draw people across that aren't quite as cut and dry as me coming with a presentation and sharing the science. There's a little bit of heart in all of this as well, and art.
Okay, well, thank you for starting our week off with good news.
Thank you.
Thank you. It sounds pretty exciting, April, and I'm looking forward to seeing how we do with filling the gaps. I'm glad we're down to that point and that work to do on that front, and it's exciting.
Thanks. I agree.
Lily, I think you're next.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Happy long weekend. I hope everyone got to enjoy the weekend. My favorite part of the weekend, I have to share, is I ate 2 milkshakes per day, and I've decided that I am one with milkshake. I'm very excited about that. But related to health information, besides my overdose in white sugar, I'm happy to let you all know that I am planning for the HIC activation. So the HIC is the Health Information Center, and so the JIC will be fully demobilized at the end of next week. And as part of that demobilization, the HIC will be activated. So that comes with it, I would say, 2 major changes. One is a change to deliverables, and one is a change to staffing. So I completed an initial scale-down plan for deliverables and floated that out to Brian, Suzanne, and April for some initial feedback. I'm working on a second draft of that, and Suzanne in particular wanted to see a scale down over the course of the 90 days of the HIC is activated. So not just planning for that first week of the HIC, but planning for the full 90 days of it. So working on making that edit. Hopefully we'll have that wrapped up early this week and back in their hands for a review. In addition to that, on the staffing side, we have been slowly scaling down over the last 2 weeks, and we'll continue to scale down over the next 2 weeks. So Erica Milo, our board recorder, and Genevieve Stokes, our admin extraordinaire in the Board of Commissioners office, have been working in the JIC since January, since we reactivated COVID-2. And they both have transitioned off in the last 2 weeks. In the next 2 weeks, both myself and Alyssa Rash will transition out. And so then the team that will keep things running is going to be amongst Kelly Losi, Cody Franz, Tyler Summers, John Royak, Kaylee Olson, and Mauricio Munoz. Not all of those names might ring bells for everyone, but I did just want to highlight Cody Franz and Tyler Summers. Those were 2 limited duration hires that we made part of this response, and they've been instrumental in the Joint Information Center. And so I'm really looking forward to their continued success in the Health Information Center. So besides that transition, I probably will come back at the end of June just to report at how the end of that transition went in terms of those final planning pieces with April and Suzanne and from a staffing perspective. And I think the only other thing that I have for you all this week is just a reminder that last time I got 10 points for taking Vance off guard and bringing up the face covering resolution. I don't think that there's anything in that resolution that is problematic. I just want to remember that we have it, and so in case we end up going in a different direction as an organization or government in the future. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Are there questions for Lilia? Okay, well, it sounds, again, exciting that we are finally able to ramp down, and maybe this time it'll be for reals, and we can move on, and you can play supporting roles, you and Alyssa. So that's fantastic. I'm excited, and happy that our limited duration staff have proved to be so helpful in this journey.
Absolutely, yeah. I will say that part of the planning that we're doing is reactivation metrics. For the DOC, I think Joe's principle of contracting and expanding is going to be, excuse me, maybe a little bit different for the HIC. In terms of coming out of the EOC into the DOC, we're bringing mass vaccination to an end from an operational standpoint. But from an information standpoint, there might be different measures in terms of reactivation. So, it's possible that we have a bad news weekend and we activate for a week and then contract back down. So we're working on having some planning and putting some thought into those metrics.
Excellent. So knowing what will trigger and what won't, that's really smart to have that laid out in advance. Excellent. Okay. Is there anything else from the information center side?
Not from me.
Okay, thank you. Thank Kelly. And I'm assuming that moving forward, it will be Kelly that will be making the reports.
I think that is going to be at the discretion of Suzanne in April. When we transitioned to the DOC last December, Suzanne had intended to bring any informational updates that she might have with her operational updates.
Sounds good.
Got it.
Okay, next up is Kate Portia. I believe you're with us. Yep.
Yes, good morning, Commissioners. Nice to see you all. I'll be really brief with my report this morning. We have finished getting the PPE out to businesses. I think, as you recall, we were holding free PPE pickups on Fridays. We got most of it out the door. We still have a bit, so we got to figure out what to do with this remaining amount that we have left. I think we may be able to work with our partners at the Paloma and Corvallis chambers and other organizations so that they could have those available for their businesses. I will say again, just our continued gratitude at the fact that Benton County has been able to reopen and enjoying the risk level that we're at. It has made all the difference for businesses. There are still, constraints though on what folks are able to do with 50% capacity and such, but it's going very, very well. Interestingly, not just for us, but all around, I think we're hearing a bit of a challenge now as we reopen and folks being able to hire enough employees to really get back open and hitting on all cylinders, if you will. So we're continuing to monitor that, and we work closely with our partners at the Workforce Board and such as well. So that is going on. And I think, as I mentioned last time, the Business Right-of-Way program in Corvallis, we're extending that through the end of October and are considering an opportunity to explore that as a permanent seasonal fixture here in our community. So that's really the end of my report for this morning, but happy to answer any questions you might have.
I have just one question, and that is about the rollout of the restaurant and retail assistance funds federally. How's that going? What are you hearing from folks here?
Yeah, funny. We've talked to a handful of folks, and so far it seems to be going pretty well. I think, there's an awareness of it. It was pushed out through so many channels. I know, like, Orla, the Oregon Restaurant Lodging Association, they were really making sure folks knew about it. And so we've been hearing pretty positive. No complaints, no frustrations at this point. I think that's usually what we hear first. So I think maybe in this case, the fact that it's been a little quieter is maybe a sign that it's moving a little more smoothly.
Excellent. Thank you. And no other kind of anomalies or unexpected business problems or glitches that are occurring? Is hiring really the biggest challenge at the moment?
I think, well, here's the biggies are, I think, hiring. I think folks are figuring it out, but the way that Oregon is structured is that businesses need to kind of be the gatekeepers on mask wearing it's a challenge for folks, and I totally understand why they did what they did from a public health perspective, but that's a challenging spot for businesses to be in, where they are, either requiring folks to show their card and be a gatekeeper, or requiring that everybody wear their mask. And I think the messaging that we have been using there is really talking to our community members, and that's maybe where you all could help as commissioners to just say, like, hey, give our businesses a break. If they're requiring that you wear your mask, there's a good reason. In some cases, folks were uncomfortable putting an employee out to be a gatekeeper. They may have been uncomfortable with legal ramifications of checking the card. It's complicated for businesses. It's not just totally straightforward. So if they're asking you to wear a mask, remember that the businesses are in a tough spot in this as well, right? So I think just continuing to support while we ease back in, which is such great news as we shift back, that this is a little different maybe than what folks have been used to. So really, Commissioner Oger, that's really been the bigger one that we've heard a bit about. And then I think for us, just really monitoring the ARPA funding and seeing what's going to maybe come down from the state legislature, and then, of course, participating with you all as you begin to have that conversation with the county.
Thank you. Pat?
Yeah, I was curious, Kate, you mentioned the business right away. Have there been conflicts with you're taking too much space, or just those kind of logistical things that come up with the new program?
Sure, no, great question. And interestingly enough, we have a survey out right now where we're asking for some feedback from folks to really understand, did folks like it? I think what we have heard resoundingly, the businesses loved it. With one exception, we had a non-retail, non-restaurant business who didn't love it. They didn't need the space. They felt like parking, that normally maybe would have been used for their business now is being used for this other case. So it hasn't, completely, really, though, the complaints have been maybe just one or two. Resoundingly, though, a lot of positive response. I think customers like the feel of the program, that you can walk down the street, either in downtown or Monroe, other areas, and see the vibrancy of people sitting outside and enjoying a meal. We're hearing from our businesses that even now as folks get vaccinated, I think folks feel more comfortable outside. There's a lot of folks that just feel safer in an open air environment. But Commissioner Malone, we're really going to look to the findings of the survey to see what folks think. So as those come in, we'd be happy to report back out what we find and what Corvallis is planning on doing.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Kate.
You bet. Thank you all.
And although not on the agenda, I noticed that both Sheriff Van Arsdale and Under Sheriff Riddler are here. Do you have anything to report to us from the Benton County Sheriff's Office?
As far as?
Well, we've been on the topic of COVID update, but we have 1 minute before 9:30. Sneaking in an update on Memorial Day weekend.
In this morning's meeting, I just basically discussed demonstrating the desired behavior as far as masking up, and continue to, if nothing else, give people in the community a sense of relief, seeing that we're still masked up when we do our contacts, things like that. That's been my direction, and that was my direction again this morning in our meeting.
Excellent. As long as it's still county policy, and yes, I think that's the way to go. Appreciate it. Onward then. We next have an update on our next supplemental budget, 21121 from Jen Ambuel.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm hoping it is the next and the last supplemental budget of this biennium, or at least the countywide budget. So just to get started, there funds that are requiring one final amendment in the 1921 biennium budget. The first being the newly established American Rescue Plan Fund. There is a net appropriation increase of that first initial installment of $9,023,528. With that, we are increasing general government operations $2 million. And that is just primarily to establish budget authority in case something were to come up within the next 30 days. And then the balance is being put in contingency, and so contingency will be increased $7,023,528 to balance the fund and any future unspecified appropriation. The HUD Block Grant Fund, there is a net appropriation increase of $400,000. Within the community services operations, we are increasing that $400,000, with the funding source being two unanticipated community development block grants, and that increases appropriations for pass-through payments to other agencies for distribution per grant requirements. The Intergovernmental Services Fund, we are just requesting a reclassification of appropriation authority. General government operations would decrease $25,000, and that's just moving some funds from capital outlay to debt service. The transfer category would decrease $562,000. And we would be moving that authority also to debt service. And then debt service increases the $587,000. And that is for the debt payment on $4,500. Rather than commingling this particular debt payment with the other debt payments we make, we are just moving the authority to the appropriate cost center to keep the payments separate rather than transferring the funds. The Enterprise Operations Fund is also a reclassification of appropriation authority. Within natural areas, parks, and events operations, we are asking for an increase of $20,000. That would be in capital outlay for some additional improvements on the Adair Clubhouse before the new tenant is ready to open up and start the catering business up out of there again. And then we are asking to decrease contingency, the corresponding $20,000, to move those funds to capital outlay. And then the last would be the trust fund, which is also another reclassification of appropriation authority. Trust operations would increase $72,000 in capital outlay for road work up at Bazell prior to the upcoming harvest. This was part of the forest stewardship plan that is being moved up due to some unforeseen circumstances on the road out at Fitton Green. And so that would then come from the contingency held within that trust fund. And so we would decrease $72,000 in contingency and move those funds to capital outlay. Overall, the net appropriation increase in the 1921 budget would be $9,423,528. And that's broken down with operations increasing $2,467,000. Transfers are decreased $562,000. Debt service is increased $587,000. And then contingency would be increased $6,931,528. And And that would be it for hopefully the last supplemental budget.
Okay. Are there any questions about this supplemental budget? Pat?
Yeah, on the debt service increase, $587,000, is that, what time period does that cover?
That would be the payment that we just made this year on the debt service.
And so that's an annual amount?
I would have to, I don't know if Mary's on here, I'd have to go check on that. I wouldn't want to say that's the annual amount. Mary, I see her microphone.
Yeah, that is the annual amount, and we had it budgeted in the wrong cost center and under the wrong name, so we were just straightening up and getting the budget correct. So it actually said debt service.
And the good news about that is the lease payment from Pfizer is still continuing through September, and so that amount is close to a wash till Pfizer leaves.
Correct.
Okay. And the rescue plan funds, $9 million. That's the first half. We got that in. It's last month now, and then 2022 in May, a similar amount comes in. Is that correct?
That is correct. It's the first payment.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so you'll be back again for the hearing and the formal decision, correct?
That is correct. I will be back on June 15th for many different budget issues.
That's right. Yeah.
All of them.
A full sweep. Okay. Thank you, Jen. Mary?
Thank you, Commissioners.
So at this point, we're moving on to item 4.3. Toby Lewis.
Don't we need a motion to move that forward to the...
To move it to the agenda? I'm sorry. If there is a motion in the packet, please go ahead.
Okay. I'll move to forward this item to the June 15th, 2021 board meeting for a public hearing.
Second. All in favor signify with an aye. 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 Okay, thank you for that, Pat. Toby, you're up next to discuss initiating the process to amend the development code regarding floodplain regulations.
Good morning, Toby Lewis, Benton County Community Development. Like you said, this is to initiate amendments to our floodplain development code. So the reason for this is we are currently in the process of preparing the 5-year audit materials for the community rating system. 5 years is kind of the big audit where FEMA has their insurance services office specialists review all of our documentation for our floodplain program. The other thing that has happened over the last year is that there's been an amendment to the community rating system, and it increased a few of the minimum requirements for qualifying for certain class levels in the community rating system. So right now, Benton County is a class 7 community. That means that our county residents receive a 15% reduction on flood insurance premiums, federal flood insurance policy premiums, if they have property that's insured in the floodplain, and a 5% if the property is outside the floodplain. In order to continue to qualify for that, one of the key requirements is that we have to maintain at least a 12-inch elevation requirement for when you build new structures. Benton County is fine for that because our requirement is 18 inches. There's a few other things, but they're fairly minor. But we do also have to have a set of floodplain regulations that is compliant with FEMA's national minimum standards in addition to the community rating system. And our code was last really updated in 2011 when our maps became effective. And since then, there have been a number of changes, mostly administrative, and those things need to be updated to match the current National Flood Insurance Program minimum standards for our code language. There's lots of administrative stuff. We need to add in something about severability, liability, designation of authority, so we have to actually designate a specific position title to be the person who administers the floodplain program, instead of just doing that kind of internally. We need to add in language about the need for compliance with the floodplain regulations and what happens if you don't comply. There's language that talks about when a structure is mapped as being partially in the floodplain and partially out of the floodplain. We have to add in language that says that the floodplain that counts as if it's in the floodplain. There's lots of minor alterations to existing definitions. We have to add a couple definitions in. Mostly it's just adjustment of words and phrases because FEMA really wants the wording to match exactly for a lot of this stuff. There's a requirement to add in a set of code language that discusses garages specifically as opposed to, or separate from accessory structures, and identifies requirements for attached garages versus detached garages because they're different. And then the other thing that we're proposing based on recommendation from the National Flood Insurance Program State Coordinator is to relax our dry land access standards for when people are partitioning their property. So right now, the county code, we put it in effect in 2011, seemed like a really good idea. The goal was to make sure that if somebody is dividing land and it's in the floodplain, that the access from the road to the dwelling site is above the flood hazard area and accessible by emergency vehicles during a flood event. The problem with that is that it has the potential to have really negative effects on floodplain functionality, in that if it's long enough or high enough, it can create kind of a causeway which will block up water and not allow the floodplain to function the way it's supposed to. So the state coordinator has recommended that we relax that, and I would agree with that. And it's been, nobody's really needed to use that language since we put it into effect. But it, and really where it comes, well, yeah, there might be one or two instances where it's come close to being used, but it's been very problematic to try and get it to work anyway. So I think it'll help, and I think it will be better for floodplain function anyway. So in order to initiate the code amendments, we need direction from you to do that. Our 5-year audit is due October 15th, tentatively scheduled for October 15th. We have hearings and work sessions set up for the code amendments, and if everything goes according to schedule, we can get the code amendments effective by October 7th. First Planning Commission work session is set up for June 22nd. Planning Commission hearing on July 6th, and then we'll come back to the board and show you what all those code amendments look like. August 3rd with hearing and first reading set for the 17th of August, and then second reading set for the 7th of September. Any questions? Sorry, that was a lot of information. Yeah.
Hi, Toby. Thank you. Thank you for clarifying the dry land access standards part. I was actually going to ask that, so thank you. So I see the process includes going to the Planning Commission, BOC, public hearing. I see in the staff report that some of the amendments might affect the natural features overlay and the planned unit development in Corvallis urban fringe. Do you have any plans to do any outreach to the city of Corvallis? for their opinions, or?
So I was looking through I don't have any plans to do specific outreach to City of Corvallis, because since I prepared the agenda packet, I looked through to see what might need to be changed, and really it's just a reference to a code section. So the numbers are going to be changing because the state has FEMA and the state have a model flood ordinance, and it's all set up in a specific order. And because of the number of administrative changes we need to make, we're going to just completely scrap the existing code and put in the parts of our code that we want to keep and are allowed to keep, and put that into the model code. So it's really just a matter of changing the reference to the section number, but no substantive changes.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm. And will Corvallis be going through parallel changes anyway?
It depends. So probably not right now. They just finished their 5-year audit last year, so that may have happened already. I think it was last year they finished the 5-year audit. So.
Okay, excellent. And I know that last time we went through this process, we also discussed increasing some of our standards so that we would be in a classification that provided more discount, but I don't recall exactly what happened with that and where we are, and thinking through some of those processes. Can you remind me?
Yeah, sure. So we are right now with the points that we have, we're kind of at the lower to maybe middle end or range of the Class 7 point range. In order to increase our points by changing our code regulations, we would need to adopt some more restrictive floodplain standards. So things like a cumulative substantial improvement or substantial damage standards. So right now, substantial improvement, substantial damage mean that if you are altering a structure, doing remodeling or adding onto it or something like that, and the cost of your project is 50% or more of the current market value of the structure, then the whole structure needs to be brought into compliance with current floodplain standards. A cumulative substantial improvement requirement would be, instead of just looking at that calculation on a permit by permit basis, we would actually track those calculations for a period of like 3 or 5 or 10 years and add them up. So maybe you might be at, I don't know, 80% or 85%, and then if a tree falls on your house and it's another 15%, then you have to bring the whole structure up. And while I don't disagree with the idea of those cumulative substantial improvement standards, they're very difficult to enforce, and you can get into some really tough discussions with property owners. Not tough in the sense of like, you know, people just getting angry, but it really, they're usually, when they hit that point, they're really at a point where they need to, emotions are running high anyway, and it makes for really difficult conversations with people because they just need to do a little improvement to get back on track, and then their whole house has to be changed. Another option would be to increase our freeboard standards. The freeboard is how high your floor needs to be above the flood elevation. Right now we have an 18-inch requirement, and that is 6 inches higher than the state minimum standard. And we could increase it more if we wanted. Benton County has places where just meeting that 18-inch requirement means that your floor has to be 6 feet above ground. So I'm not recommending increasing the freeboard standard at this point. We could require that there be absolutely no construction in the floodplain. We have a lot of farmland in the floodplain, so most of our floodplain is fairly open, but people who own farming properties often need accessory structures and farming structures, and I don't think it would be a great plan to remove the ability to create those structures. So I think we're kind of, in terms of code amendments to increase our points, I don't think we're at a point where we could really improve our class rating with code amendments. And a class 7 is while I would love to increase our class rating, a class 7 is a very good standing for a county of our size. And I don't have any good suggestions right now for how to improve our rating to the next level, because we do have a good floodplain program. And I think the things that would be most beneficial to members of the public are things that aren't going to get us a lot of points, but are going to be helpful. So I've been talking with Alyssa this month about when would be a good time to really go through our outreach program within the yearly outreach mailer and revamp that so that it's going out a couple times a year. Considering wildfires this last summer and COVID and everything else, this year, and the need for code revisions, and it's a 5-year audit cycle, this year probably isn't going to be that year, but we'll check back in August. I have a time to do that with her, and then we'll see where we're at and maybe plan that for next year.
Sounds good. Thank you. I appreciate that overview and just a reminder of where we are. Are there any other questions for Toby? I do believe that a motion is in order.
I'll move to direct staff to proceed with the public hearing process for development code amendments to reflect required and recommended changes to the floodplain recommendations.
Second. Any further discussion? All in favor signify with an aye. 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 Okay, thank you, Toby. We will look forward to the next stages in the process.
Thank you.
Okay. We are at the end of our work session, and we have typically been taking a 5-minute break. So we will recess until 10. Give you 7 minutes or 8. Thank you. All three commissioners are present on camera. Okie dokie, back to it. We will begin our business meeting with proclamations, and today we have one proclamation that Johan will be presenting in the matter of proclaiming June 2021 as LGBTQIA plus Pride Month. Take it away, Joe.
Thank you. Good morning, commissioners. Good morning, community members. I'm excited to be reading this proclamation. It's the first one in my history as I was looking through it to see. Seems like we've heard some community members say that they've been a proclamation for LGBTQIA plus Pride Month before, but I could not find it in our records. So either Corvallis did it, or they're confused, or it's been lost. So we now have it here, and we will continue to have it. So I'll be reading this out to you all now. This June, jurisdictions around the world are celebrating their lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, queer, intersex, and asexual community members, who is commonly known as Pride Month. This year, Benton County joins these jurisdictions in celebrating all LGBTQIA plus people who live, work, play, and worship in our community. In June of 1969, an uprising began when LGBTQIA plus community members were being harassed and harmed by the police at the Stonewall Inn in New York. To commemorate the act of resistance against oppression, the Pride celebration was created. Over the past 52 years, Pride has become a celebration of community, perseverance, and survival worldwide. Pride embraces artistic expression through multiple mediums: visual art, poetry, spoken word, drag performances, and many more. Pride helps people explore their gender identities and sexual orientations, allows straight and cisgender allies to express support in community. LGBTQIA plus people have always been part of our community, but they have not always had support or safety to be out. In the 1950s and 1960s, gay people state and nationwide faced persecution and sterilization. In 1976, the Corvallis Gazette-Times featured an article about gay women wanting to marry. Angry readers were unhappy that the paper wasn't expressing, quote, family-friendly material, even though the women were expressing their desire to have their own families. That same year, the first LGBTQ plus community student organization at Oregon State University began. Over the years, OSU students, faculty, and staff have faced a variety of challenges and celebrations and played critical roles in advancing equity in the community. OSU football alum Sarah Talumo, also known as Mr. Aloha, didn't feel safe being out while on the team or during his NFL career. Mr. Aloha is now an activist supporting LGBTQIA plus youth. Oregon is home to many LGBTQ plus AA people, and equity for all continues to be part of Benton County's purpose. Benton County has a history of supporting the LGBTQ plus community. Corvallis and Oregon State University have been the home to formal organizations since 1976, allowing individuals to find a sense of home and comfort. In 2004, the Benton County Board of Commissioners allowed marriage licenses to be distributed to same-gender couples before many other areas did. Shortly after Measure 36 banned same-gender marriage, Benton County voters made clear that they supported marriage equity and voted against the measure. The ban was in place in 2014 when a judge found the amendment unconstitutional and marriages began the same day. Legislation has and continues to harm the LGBTQIA plus people, but Benton County is committed to equity for all and supports everyone honoring their sexual orientations and gender identities. Therefore, let it be proclaimed that June 2021 is LGBTQIA plus Pride Month. All community members are invited to celebrate.
Thank you, Johan.
Thank you. I want to conclude that there's more than just those that were named. There's pansexual and a bunch of other identities as well. And I'll be doing some trainings around that when I get the chance to get that all organized. There's a lot more out there, but that is a general cover thing. And the general common language now is to say the LGBTQ plus community, and that covers some of those other identities as well.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Do I have a motion to accept the resolution?
Yes, I move to proclaim June 2021 as LGBTQIA plus Pride Month in Benton County and encourage all residents to join in this observance.
I'll second that.
All in favor signify with an aye.
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 Aye. Thank you very much. Glad to be back to observation.
Thank you very much.
If we did it before.
Yes. And I also want to name that today is the 100th anniversary of the Tulsa massacres. So there's something to reflect upon. I'll be sending out an email to county employees later today with some information on that, but wanted to have that named in this space. Thank you all.
Thank you for that. Okay. Departmental reports and requests. We have Kelly Volkman with us this morning to discuss a decision to extend the Oregon Health Insurance Marketplace Community Partner Program contract.
Good morning, everybody. Not sure why my camera is not working here. But yes, I have actually 2 grants that I wanted to speak with you about. I'm not sure if the second one got onto your formal agenda or not. As in the way of most of our public health grants, they come in at the very last minute, zooming towards the deadline. The first one is the Marketplace grant. This will be our 3rd year of getting this grant. It's mostly an extension. It's actually not even an RFP. It's an extension of the grant that we've had to provide bilingual, bicultural services for outreach and mostly a referral, not so much the enrollment, for the Marketplace, which is the what used to be called Obamacare. It's the private insurance that is available for people that don't qualify for OHP because of their income. And it has been very successful. The thing that makes us unique in this is that we're able to provide bicultural and bilingual assistance, and we're one of the only places in the 2 counties that can do that. The funding allows for, it's a $60,000 extension, and it allows for almost all of the salary for one of our health navigators, and what it doesn't cover, we offset with some of our outreach and enrollment funds that come through the state. Would you like me to talk about the second grant as well while I'm here, or at this time?
Let's take them one at a time, and then we'll move on to the second one. Sure.
Okay.
Are there any questions about the Marketplace grant extension? We would be happy then to proceed to a motion to okay the extension of this grant opportunity.
Well, I'll move that the Benton County Health Department submit the proposed Marketplace grant application.
Second.
Okay. All in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
All right.
Aye. Thank you.
Dan, you just went to, you're muted.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
If you want to go ahead and present the second grant opportunity, that would be great.
Thank you. I appreciate this. The second grant is our Community Partner Outreach Program grant. It's another outreach and enrollment grant, this time for OHP, and it's through Oregon Health Authority. And this is a grant that we've had now for 8 years. The last one, this is a 2-year grant period, and it is for $155,000. And that includes the salary and benefits plus an indirect cost for the 2-year period for 1 FTE. And this provides outreach and enrollment services for our Oregon Health Plan. We have been really good grant partners with OHA. It's safe to say that they love us. They think of us as shining stars in the state, which is always nice to hear. I don't have any more information for you on that, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions for Kelly about this particular grant opportunity? Is there a motion to approve the application for the next 2-year period of this grant that provides a 1 FTE navigator for outreach and enrollment for OHP?
Comment, keep the grants coming, Kelly. But I will move that the Benton County Health Department submit the Community Partners grant to the OHA.
favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you. Very much appreciated. And yes, Pat, I will definitely keep those grants coming.
Excellent. Next up is item 6.2, discussion and decision to grant sole source approval for courthouse security services contract, sheriff, and the
Appreciate your time this morning. Thank you. First time I've done one of these, so we'll see what it looks like. This is a request to have DPI do our contracted services with the courthouse. They currently have that contract and have had that contract since 2017. I had Commander Jail Captain John DeBaney reach out to the jail group to see who uses what. And Yamhill, Washington, Marion, and Lane counties all use DPI. Nobody else in the area is available to use. Again, Sheriff Garrett, Sheriff Cass, if this is who those guys use, obviously I'm going to trust them. This is who we've used since 2017, and I believe they do a really good job over at the courthouse. There's a cost savings with them doing the contracted services versus deputies doing that, and I don't know if you received that. I think you did, so you can see what the cost savings is. So I guess that's the whole purpose here is this is our the only local entity that provides this service. They've been providing the service and they've been doing a great job. So my request is just to make them the sole contract.
So let me just jump in real quick. This is really the first sole source request of the board under our clarified guidelines for sole source. If you recall, our contract manual requires contracts that will be over $100,000. Sole source approval come from the Board of Commissioners. Unfortunately for Sheriff Van Arsdale, that's him. He's the first one through the chute, and he's done a good job. The other thing to note about the sole source here is that it has been vetted in terms of cost savings, which is one of the requirements in our code, and it has been vetted in terms of being the only vendor locally and in the area that can perform this particular service. So all that is noted in the order if you're so inclined to approve this. If you are inclined to approve this, hi Nancy, the motion doesn't have the correct order number. So that number is 2021-043. And that's all I have. Sheriff Van Arsdale did a stellar job.
Well, and I have to apologize quickly. Dawn Dale did want me to mention this is the first time under the new guidelines, and she wanted to make sure I gave Vance the proper recognition, and I failed miserably. I'm sorry.
So I have a couple questions. So this is the first time we're doing the sole source request. But otherwise, is this like a contract extension, or is this something new?
Can Sheriff Van Arsdale, would you mind your mic?
Okay, should I repeat that?
I think this is the second time we've actually renewed. No, we embarked upon this contract. This is the first renewal. That's my recollection, because we had quite a discussion about shifting to contract security a few years back. So, but Sheriff Van Arsdale has that answer, I'm sure.
Well, what I was going to say is this has been in place since 2017, so that would be that first biennium, one renewal, and now here we are on the second renewal.
Okay, so it's more just sort of routine, rather, except for the fact that it's the first we have to approve it under a sole source request.
And I want to clarify, this is not a renewal. Our contract, under our contracting authority, we are allowed to go for 5 years. This particular contract did not have a provision in it to allow it to be extended, so this will be a new contract, same terms, same outfit, but it will be a new contract. So technically, it's not an extension of the original. I just want to be clear on that.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. And then I just wanted to mention one little thing is I think in the staff report, it was referenced BCC chapter 2.725. And just, I think in the future it'd be really helpful. I didn't see that in the packet. So in the future it'd be helpful if one of those chapters or information is referenced, it'd be helpful to just have it in the packet. I was able to find it on our website, and so I looked that over, and that was good, but just a future request.
Okay. Any further questions for either the sheriff or county council? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve order number D 2021-043, authorizing the use of sole source exception to the process described in BCC 2.275 to contract with DPI Group for security services for the Benton County Courthouse.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor signify with an aye.
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 Aye. Okay. Sheriff, you passed with flying colors.
And Vance, I did catch that XXX wasn't the proper resolution number. So I want the record to know that. Note that.
Duly noted. You get a credit moving forward to the next meeting.
All right.
Okay. Well, that was the last agenda item, but I do have a question for my fellow commissioners, which I sent by email during the break. I was scheduled to attend the CSC, Community Services Consortium, Budget Committee meeting this Friday at, I think it's at 2 p.m., and I cannot make it. And we need to have someone there from Benton County to have a quorum at that Budget Committee meeting. Might one of you be able to go to that meeting remotely, virtually, in my stead?
I can go to that virtually.
Thank you. I appreciate it greatly.
Unless you want to, Pat.
Well, I was just going to say I did not get the memo, and so I haven't checked my schedule. I think AOC has something this Friday. I hadn't gotten that far down the way. Anyway, if there's a problem, Nancy, just let me know, and I will check.
Okay, yeah, I should be good to go.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. And I know that all the CSC folks do. So it's been so difficult this year to have a regular quorum for those meetings. Okay, with that, unless there are any other straggling items, we are adjourned.
I have one announcement that
okay.
Benton County Public Works has received a $990,000 community house grant from ODOT, and that will should complete the Merloy to Pinkerton, Corvallis, Albany path segment. So some good news.
That's excellent news. I knew we were, above the line, as they say, but that we weren't sure whether we would be funded or not. That is very good to hear. Thank you. Okay, with that, we are adjourned.